Welcome to All Hallows Eve. Blessed Samhain and a happy Halloween to all. Yes, it is the morning of October 31st. And for today's video, I'm going to talk to you about all of the horror movies that I watched for the first time in October 2024. I've got 19 movies to talk to you about today. I really wish that I had time to have watched more, but ain't that just the way?
Ain't that just the way?
My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel. Thank you for spending some of your Halloween with me, and let's get started with my list ranked from my least favorite to my favorite. And my number 19 is Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 from 2024. So this, of course, takes place after the first Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey. There was a massacre in that movie, and now the town and Christopher Robin are trying to rebuild their lives. And meanwhile, the Winnie-the-Pooh characters are out for revenge or to protect themselves or something. Okay. Listen, I actually did not technically watch the first Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey. I put it on one day and I was just like, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not in the mood to put up with this movie. But I watched this one because it got quite a bit of a higher budget. I heard it was a lot better. I checked it out with my buddy Chris. We were both interested in it. It was streaming on Peacock. And it was not good. It was not very good. That's probably not like huge news to you guys. This thing just boggles my mind because it's using the Winnie-the-Pooh characters, but it really doesn't do anything with them. This movie actually, apparently, according to my friend Chris, who watched the first one, retcons a lot of that movie and gives them a new origin story. And guys, basically they're just ripping off the Island of Dr. Moreau as an excuse to have a slasher movie with Terrifier-like kills. So really, this Winnie-the-Pooh exploitation has nothing to do with Winnie-the-Pooh. It's just a Dr. Moreau movie with Terrifier kills that they happen to call Winnie-the-Pooh. So like, it's so weird. Like, if you're going to exploit Winnie-the-Pooh, maybe actually exploit it. But the movie itself, it's not horrible. Like, the acting's not terrible. It's a little bit overly dramatic for the kind of movie it is and overly trying to be almost sad, but okay, whatever, they're doing it. But honestly, this movie really made me appreciate the Terrifier movies. They prove that you can have extreme gore, mean violence with pretty good practical effects and still have your kills not have any impact at all. This is technically a violent movie. None of the violence hit me. Nothing was disturbing or gross. I don't know, just it takes a skilled director, I think, to really be able to gross out an audience, and the Terrifier movies can do it. This movie, this, little ripoff thing, it really can't. Number 18 is Hell's Ground from 2007. So this is a Pakistani horror film in which a group of young adults decide to go on a little road trip. They're all in an RV. They kind of get lost out in the woods and encounter zombies and a scary, murderous family. So the reason I saw this is last month I attended a 24-hour horror movie marathon in Chicago, Illinois. The Music Box of Horrors. Went with some buddies and we had a really good time. They mostly played movies that I had already seen. So most of the movies that I watched there, I'm not going to talk about in this video because this video is all about new discoveries. But I definitely had not seen Hell's Ground, nor had I ever seen a Pakistani horror film. This is kind of funny because, like, if it wasn't for the exotic appeal of watching a horror movie from a country that I've never seen one from before, a different culture, then I wouldn't be left with much of anything in this movie because it's really just a super run-of-the-mill, standard, dumb horror movie. I love horror films. I think there's so many great ones, but the stereotype of horror films among non-horror fans is like, oh, it's a bunch of dumb teenagers who make dumb decisions and get killed off one by one. And that's what Hell's Ground is. Like, they make horrible decisions. They're really stupid characters and they get killed. There's zombies in this movie, like, inexplicably, but that's kind of fun. The look of the killer, the main killer that they have to face off against, is kind of interesting. It's the kind of thing you would not see in an American movie. It was something different, and it's gory, and it's got some pretty good gore. I thought probably more effective than Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2. I didn't think it was a very good movie, but I had a fine time with it. Number 17, Daddy's Head from 2024. So at the beginning of this movie, a husband and father gets in a car accident and passes away. But it's an interesting case with his wife and his son, in that his wife is the stepmother of his son. They recently got married, and the two of them really don't have a relationship at all. They are really just connected by the dad. And now that he's gone, she really just has to raise this kid on her own with no idea what she's doing. So a lot of the movie is her dealing with that, them trying to find some kind of relationship. But the son sees his father in the house, in the woods, but he looks somewhat different, and they have to figure out what's going on with that. So this is one of those movies that went straight to the streaming service Shudder, but it actually premiered at Fantastic Fest recently, and I heard a lot of buzz for it, as I heard buzz for a lot of movies at a Fantastic Fest, about how it was like an updated The Babadook, and it was really creepy, and I was really looking forward to watching this on Shudder. And I thought it was okay. It is the kind of grief horror that we have seen many, many times. Grief has become a huge theme in horror films as of late. So it feels very familiar, but the unusual relationship between the stepmother and the son made it a little bit more interesting. It's a little overly dramatic, but it's got very good acting, so I was cool with it. My main problem with the movie is the ending just it didn't come together for me. This movie is like, it is a textbook example of half-formed ideas, undercooked ideas. Because this movie's setting up a lot of mysteries, like, what is going on? Like, it's not recognizable from, like, any horror subgenre you're familiar with. It's got some really creepy moments. But by the end of the movie, it's clear that they didn't think any of this through, and the movie's not really going to offer you much in terms of answers or conclusion, or it just wimps out at the end, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, it wimps out at the end, but a lot of other people seem to really be liking it, so hey, maybe you will too. At number 16, Frogs from 1972. So this is about a nature photographer who ends up getting drawn in by this rich family out on an island to hang out with them and also try to figure out what is going on with the extreme raise in frog population on this island, as well as a lot of other reptiles. And he comes to the conclusion that maybe nature is fighting against this family and wants them gone. So we're finally getting into some physical media. This is the new Blu-ray that just came out of this movie from Kino Lorber, specifically their Kino Cult line. And I'd really been looking forward to this movie. I especially wanted to watch it with my buddy Chris, because we both we find frogs funny. So we wanted to watch frogs together. Frogs are very memeable animals, is all I'm saying. And we had a good time watching this. It's one of those typical 1970s eco horror films about nature fighting back. It's got a good cast with Sam Elliott in the lead role, a very young, mustache-less Sam Elliott. So he hadn't yet reached his full power in terms of mustache. But it's also got Ray Milland, who I also really like. We had a good time joking around watching this movie, not necessarily at the movie's expense, but again, about frogs and reptiles. One thing that I was really questioning going into this is, what are the frogs going to do? Is a frog actually going to eat someone? Because frogs, they're not really animals that attack people. No, not really. It's kind of about frogs, but it's more so just about reptiles in general, and even spiders just attacking people. The kill scenes are kind of fun, although not filmed realistically at all. It's a decent little eco horror film. I didn't think it was a great movie by any means, but we had a fine time with it. So frogs, there you go.
Ain't that just the way?
Number 15, Black Pumpkin from 2020. This is about a couple of teenagers who, on Halloween, accidentally awaken an evil that has lain dormant, Bloody Bobby. And now them and their family and friends are trying to survive the night and try not to get killed off by Bloody Bobby. So I checked this out because I made a video in the last month about Halloween movies, underrated Halloween movies, and I watched it specifically for that purpose. And, I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. This is where we're starting to get much more positive on the list. It's definitely a very low-budget horror film, but I thought they really did the most with their budget that they could. The actors are actually pretty good, pretty likable characters. I thought Bloody Bobby had a good design. It's kind of reminiscent of Sam from Trick or Treat, but pretty good. A lot of the kills are a little lackluster, but there is one kill involving a lawnmower that I thought was really great. And in doing a little more research about this movie, I found out that the main girl's boyfriend is played by an actor named Matt Rife, and he's apparently some kind of up-and-coming stand-up comedian. I never would have guessed this from watching the movie. He just seems like stoic, handsome guy, but he's apparently a stand-up comedian. And I almost mentioned that in my video, but I was like, I don't know who Matt Rife is. I'm gonna seem like a poser talking about Matt Rife. But a lot of people were talking about it in the comments, so he's in this movie. I don't know anything about him, but he has Netflix comedy specials, and he's in Black Pumpkin. At number 14, Satan's Little Helper from 2004. So this is about an absolutely insane child who is addicted to a video game about Satan, and he dresses up as Satan's Little Helper for Halloween. He meets a serial killer who's dressed up like the devil, and he automatically assumes, this is the Satan from my video game, and I'm gonna be his helper, and he runs around helping this guy kill people. So this was not my first time watching the movie. It was was my first time watching it on this new Synapse Blu-ray. Very happy to own this movie in my collection. It is a ridiculous movie. Like, the script is just like nonsense practically. But it is fun. I actually really like the atmosphere of this movie. Now, the film it's low budget. It's not particularly cinematic in the way it's shot or anything, but it was filmed in a small coastal town, looks like on the East Coast, during Halloween with lots of Halloween decorations. That's really all you need for atmosphere. So this thing didn't need a budget. It just needed to film there, and that's great. I like the look of the Satan monster. I like Catherine Winnick in this movie, who is like, she's very pretty. She's very, very pretty in this movie. And I really, really like her in it. And it's a pretty fun, goofy, kind of comedic, but way overly mean Halloween slasher. I enjoy it. Number 13, Necronomicon from 1993. So this stars Jeffrey Combs as H.P. Lovecraft. And H.P. Lovecraft goes into this secret library where he can read from the Necronomicon and fact check his stories. There, as he is writing down what he reads in that book, we are treated to 3 different stories. So this is a Lovecraft-themed anthology. And I had a pretty good time with this movie. Now, for one thing, it's great that Jeffrey Combs plays H.P. Lovecraft. Nobody's got a resume that more deserves to play him than Jeffrey Combs. They put him in some makeup to make him look more like Lovecraft, and it's pretty fun. But the stories are all at least loosely based on actual Lovecraft stories, and they're of somewhat varying quality, but I thought they were all at least pretty good. And the movie's got incredible practical effects, really cool monster effects and creatures. I'm actually planning a video next month where I'll be talking about this and movies like it, so stay tuned. Number 12, Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf from 1985. Of course, the sequel to the original, The Howling. This one is about the brother of a journalist who died by turning into a werewolf, who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be Dee Wallace from the original Howling, though I wasn't 100% sure while I was watching this. But he wants to find out what happened to his sister, and then him and another journalist get drawn in by Christopher Lee, who is a werewolf hunter, to go track down a werewolf cult and stop all that werewolfism. So I had never seen this movie. I'd actually only ever seen the original The Howling. Vinegar Syndrome just released this in an absolutely beautiful 4K. I thought the movie looked fantastic. It's got a really cool cover as well. And I'd always heard this movie was really bad. I don't think it is. I had a good time with this movie. You know, my friend Ken over at the Mid-Level Media channel, he had a great review of this, and he talked about how this movie is like part trashy 80s horror movie, but part classic gothic horror movie, partially because of the presence of Christopher Lee. And it's great to see Christopher Lee as basically a Van Helsing type figure. He is our badass werewolf hunter, and that is awesome. But also in the movie, they actually go to Transylvania and they track down this werewolf cult out of an old castle. And it's got some really good old school gothic horror vibes, while still definitely being a trashy 80s horror movie. Sybil Danning plays the leader of the cult, and she's just wildly over the top and ridiculous. You just gotta love it. One interesting thing I actually learned about the behind the scenes is that the director was expecting the studio to send him werewolf costumes, werewolf suits to use for all the werewolves in the movie. And there's a lot of werewolves. And they didn't send him any. They sent him monkey suits, which, you know, that had to be like soul crushing to find out that that's what you're gonna have to use. But he did a pretty good job. I thought the werewolves looked decent in this. Nowhere near as good as in the original The Howling. Those are some of the best werewolves ever put to screen. But this, not bad. So I enjoyed this movie. Number 11, Salem's Lot from 2024. So this is a brand new version of the classic Stephen King story that was kind of stuck on the shelves at Warner Brothers for at least a couple of years, but they finally just dumped it on HBO Max. I was really excited to watch it, and I enjoyed Salem's Lot. I thought it was pretty good. You know, I did a review of this, and you will not see more negativity in the comment section on any of my videos I've ever done more than on my Salem's Lot review. It was absolutely crazy. People hate this movie. It seems like people on the internet wildly despised this, thought it was horrible. But on the flip side, everyone I know who watched it liked it. Like everyone who I know is a real person, almost without exception. I can think of maybe one person, but it seems like pretty much everybody liked this movie, thought it was pretty good. And I also thought it was pretty good. It does annoy me a little bit. And like, don't get me wrong, you can hate this movie all you want. It's totally fine. It's just a movie. But one thing that kind of annoys me about the negativity is all these people saying, oh, it's just another useless remake. Hollywood just keeps making remakes, blah, blah, blah. This movie's not a remake. This is the first time that Salem's Lot has ever been a movie. What? You're thinking, that's crazy. Tobe Hooper made one in 1979. No, he didn't. He made a TV miniseries made for television, not even a TV movie. It's a TV miniseries. So I was really excited for this because I wanted to see Salem's Lot finally as a film. And that's what we got here. Not a theatrical film, unfortunately, but one that was made for the theatrical market. So that's why this movie is not useless to me. Even though it is not as good as the TV miniseries, it's not like the Pet Sematary remake. So the Pet Sematary remake is useless to me. Like, that's another one that I don't think is horrible. I think it's okay, but I have no use for it because I love the 1989 movie so much. I'm always just going to watch that. But Salem's Lot, I think they're pretty good companion pieces. You got the TV miniseries that is long, much slower, and really just fleshes everything out much better, and is definitely better. And then you've got the new one that is a 2-hour movie. It's pretty fast, it's fun, it's intense, it's fast paced. And I think you can kind of pick whichever one you want for whichever mood. I thought it was a good, just like old school, vampire movie in the style of the 80s and everything, and I recommend it. At number 10, Suspense from 1913. So this 24-hour marathon that I attended, they do it every year. They usually open up with a silent film. And while when I attended last year, it was a full-length silent film, this is a silent short. It's about 10 to 15 minutes long, and it's kind of a proto-slasher. It is about a woman who is home alone, I think with her baby, and this creepy guy comes up, tries to break into the house, and tries to kill her with a knife. And I thought it was very effective. It was very good at what it was trying to do. It's just very cool to see something from 1913. I mean, it's well over 100 years old, and it still held up pretty well in terms of just being a short little silent movie. I quite enjoyed it. It had live accompaniment when I saw it, so if you watch it, I don't know if it's available on YouTube or something, but if you watch it, you won't get the same accompaniment that I did. The composer said that he was very much inspired by John Carpenter. Apparently, Suspense was also very influential on Stanley Kubrick when he made The Shining. So it was cool to see that, and it was very effective. I'm not the biggest silent film guy, but I thought when it's like 10 to 15 minutes long, that's kind of perfect for me. I enjoyed it a lot. At number 9, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir from 1947. So I watched this for my video that I did last month on ghost movies, and it didn't make that list, not because it's not good, it's very good, but because it's not a horror movie at all. So this stars Jean Tierney as a recently widowed woman who decides she wants to strike out on her own for the first time in her life, and with her daughter, she rents a beautiful seaside cottage, but discovers the only problem with this amazing house she's now living in is it is haunted by the ghost of a seaman played by Rex Harrison. And there's a lot of just banter between them, and there's maybe a little bit of romantic chemistry that they both don't quite know what to do with since one of them is dead. So this is not a horror film. It's very much more of a romantic comedy, a little bit of romantic drama. Jean Tierney and Rex Harrison are fantastic in this. I especially loved Rex Harrison as this very over-the-top sailor captain guy who has very much come to terms with the fact that he's dead, he's a ghost, but he just wants to chill in his house and live his best life. Natalie Wood's also in this too, as is George Sanders, so it's got a great cast. The movie's just very beautiful looking. I love the atmosphere of both this house and the sea that's right there. It's a really nice little ghost movie, just not scary at all. Onibaba from 1964. So this is about two women who survive out in a rural area by killing passing by soldiers, stealing their stuff, and selling it. And that's how they make their living. But when one guy that they used to know comes back home from the war without the old woman's son and the young woman's husband, who they were hoping was going to come back, but unfortunately he passed away. But when he comes back, he starts a sexual relationship with the young woman, and the old woman gets very jealous and is afraid that he's going to take this young woman away from her, and she takes some drastic measures. So this doesn't really sound like a horror movie, and for a long time it isn't, until really when the third act kicks in, and it really, really is. So this is a Japanese horror film, a classic Japanese horror film that I've been meaning to watch for a long time. And I've been wanting to get more into Japanese horror lately, and I thought, you know what, Onibaba is one I have to see. I've already seen Kwaidan and Kuroneko and House, otherwise known as Hausu, I believe. I gotta see Onibaba. And I really liked it. Like, for a while, I wasn't so sure because it's about very unlikable characters, and it's really just about this, very horny sexual relationship with his mother being really angry about it. And I was like, where is this going? It goes somewhere very cool. Very cool by the third act. I will say the one thing that everybody knows about Onibaba is the mask. There's this masked face that is the iconic image from this film. According to my very quick basic research, this is called a Hanya mask. In Japan, it's normally worn in theater instead of battle and is normally representative of a jealous female demon. And it's definitely supposed to represent some kind of demon in this movie. And there's just some really creepy stuff. And the way the character relationships go is very interesting. So I really liked Onibaba a lot. It's probably one of my favorite Japanese horror films at this point. The Woman in Black from 2012. So this stars Daniel Radcliffe in one of his early post-Harry Potter roles. And he plays a lawyer who has to come out to this remote mansion to sort through all of the papers of a deceased client. And there he discovers it's haunted. There's a woman in black there. So I actually saw this in theaters back in 2012. Didn't think that much of it. I actually remember thinking it was kind of boring, but rewatching it over the past month, I mean, my opinion totally changed on it. I enjoyed it a lot. I do think the scares are very Hollywood and they're very indicative of where horror was at around 2012. Just a lot of like ghosts and things jumping out at you and screaming and a lot of jump scares. That stuff didn't super work for me, but the atmosphere is fantastic. This is a just jaw-droppingly gorgeous haunted house movie with all the vibes you could possibly ask for and a lot of interesting backstory that Daniel Radcliffe has to uncover. So I thought this was really good. A Chinese Ghost Story from 1987. So this is about a tax collector who comes into town and finds there's nowhere for him to stay the night. So he goes up to a feared haunted temple to stay the night. And there he discovers ghosts and a beautiful woman who he falls in love with. So this is another one that I watched for a video on ghost movies that I did last month. And this is a classic Hong Kong horror film. I'm so glad I finally saw it. It's kind of difficult to see. It's not officially available on streaming anywhere, but I highly recommend finding a way to watch it. It's got some crazy, just bonkers stuff in here with like stop motion zombies, martial arts fighting. A lot of Hong Kong horror films have martial arts fighting in them, which makes them just kind of interesting and really cool. It's got a good romance to it. It looks great. I thought this was a very good movie. Cracking into the top 5, we've got End of the Line from 2007. So this is about the passengers of an underground subway. And when the subway breaks down, they find out that there is a bit of an apocalypse happening around them because of a religious cult that has all come together on the mission of killing a lot of people, basically. So I watched this because I picked this up from Terrorvision. Terrorvision is a very small Blu-ray boutique label that puts out like weird old horror movies, basically. I actually got to buy this in person from them because they had a booth at the marathon that I attended. So I picked this one up because they told me that it's actually scary. And I'll be damned, it's actually scary. This movie kind of scared the hell out of me, and I'm very, very impressed by that. It is a very intense, dark, violent, extreme religious horror film about a cult. You know, it's interesting. Over the past month, I also watched Terrifier 3, and there's a lot of controversy going around about Terrifier 3. Like, does it go too far? Is it too extreme because of certain things it does? If you got a problem with Terrifier 3, do not watch End of the Line. This movie is way more disturbing, way more extreme, I thought, while not being quite as like goopy gory, just much more disturbing. And you know, one thing that was also sold to me about this movie is that it's got some like monsters. You can actually see them on the front. You might be a little bit upset that the Blu-ray cover kind of spoils the monsters, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing can prepare you for seeing the monsters in this movie. Like, it is so freaking scary. There's also a jump scare in this movie that like really got me more than almost any jump scare. This movie just creeped the hell out of me. It doesn't have like, I think its biggest problem is it doesn't have great dialogue. You know, most of the time, dialogue is either exceptional or most of the time it's just pretty normal. This dialogue felt a little clunky to me, like it didn't quite totally flow sometimes, but that's literally my only problem with the movie. Other than the fact that like I didn't enjoy it because it's not an enjoyable movie, but that's not the point. It's an experience and it's a darn good one. At number 4, Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss from 1990. So this picks up right after the end of Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, where the demon monster witch girl of that movie comes back from the dead again, escapes from hell, and she has picked a boy in this school that she wants to be her new boyfriend, and she will make him be her boyfriend and do anything she wants at any cost. So this is one that I saw at the marathon that I attended. This movie's actually very difficult to get a hold of. There's no like in-print physical media release right now. It's not officially on streaming, but you might be able to watch it on this very platform here. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but you might just be able to search for it. And, but I was very lucky that I got to see this in a theater, my first time ever watching it. And I loved this movie. Like, the whole crowd loved it. This was the crowd pleasing, like, event movie of the day. Like, everybody was just laughing, having a great time. This is a really funny movie. It's a horror comedy through and through. There's a lot of high school satire to it that's very silly. And, I just kind of enjoyed everything about it. Is it a great film? Does it have great performances? You know, no, but it is ambitious, like towards the end. Like, it really goes for it. Like, it's crazy to think where the Prom Night franchise started with just like a basic slasher, and where it goes by the third act of Prom Night 3 is insane. So I recommend this movie if you just want to laugh, have a good time, you've especially got friends around. Prom Night 3 is a blast. At number 3, And Now the Screaming Starts from 1973. So this takes place in the early 18th century, and it's about a newlywed couple who moves into the ancestral estate of the husband, and she quickly discovers it is haunted, and there are some very aggressive ghosts that are coming after her, and her husband and nobody around will tell her what is going on. So is this an amazing movie? Does it necessarily deserve this very high placement on my ranking? Maybe not necessarily, but this is just my kind of movie. This is my jam. I really enjoyed it. I just love like a 1970s British period piece ghost story. Sign me up. I love the atmosphere. This house that this takes place in looks really cool. It's got so many actors that are very recognizable if you are into horror movies of this period. Most particularly Peter Cushing, who's awesome in this, but Herbert Lom has got a great, very skeevy role in this. It's got Guy Rolfe. It's got a lot of great people. So that was very fun for me to see. But on the flip side, the ghosts are very combative in this movie. Like, I really like the ghosts. You know, they're not just like creak a doorway here or there. Like, these ghosts will come at you. And the backstory discovered about the ghosts is one of the most disturbing things I saw in a movie last year. So I really recommend this thing. And I don't have this on physical media, but I did just buy a poster for it, because at the marathon that I attended, there was a guy there selling a lot of old horror movie posters, like original one sheets and all kinds of stuff for pretty good prices. And he had this and I bought it. This is a size 30 by 40, which is a more unusual, very large size for a poster. Apparently it was used back in the day sometimes for extra promotion for the movie. It's printed on cardstock. Looks really good. So I'm so excited to get this up on my wall. But at number 2, Terrifier 3 from 2024. When it comes to new releases, this has been the horror movie of the month, the one that everyone is talking about. I put out a review of this movie last month, and it is now my biggest, most viewed review that I have ever done, which I was not expecting. I wasn't sure that anybody would care about me just chiming in on this very popular movie, but turns out people did. And I think one reason that review did really well is people kind of resonated with it because I took a very unusual stance on it. And that's the reason I was actually a little bit worried to put that review out. I thought people would think I was weird or crazy, but my stance was basically that I think these Terrifier movies, particularly Terrifier 3, are like, they're campy fun. Like, I don't find them to be these super disturbing, upsetting, very controversial horror movies. Like, they don't feel that way to me. These movies feel like camp. They feel fun. And I just, for the most part, just enjoy them. And since I put that review out, a lot of people in the comments have agreed with that. They also feel that way about this movie. And I've seen more reviews trickling out that are saying a similar thing. Because before I thought everybody was just saying this movie is so disturbing and it's the sickest thing ever, blah, blah, blah. I think there's a little bit of clickbait titling going on with that. But yeah, I mean, you might find these movies super disturbing and that's fine, but like, I find these movies fun. And I thought Terrifier 3 was fun. Probably the funniest of the bunch. They're the most leaning into comedy, particularly with Art the Clown. David Howard Thornton, he's like really leaning into being funny and like charming in this role, which is interesting to see his like really settling into this role really, really well. It is like really disgusting at certain times. Like the violence, it just provokes a reaction in me. It's either so goopy, gooey, it's fun. Kind of like when I saw the Evil Dead remake. I love the Evil Dead remake, and when it came out in 2013, it was the goriest thing I'd ever seen in my life. So it was just so much fun. I was like laughing and shielding my eyes and you know, I like getting that experience. The Terrifier movies give me that experience. But sometimes the violence, it reaches an upsetting point. And I think that's why the Terrifier movies are more successful than, say, the Hatchet movies. Because I feel like the Hatchet movies, they're all just goopy, gooey fun, and there's no realism to it. But Terrifier 3 lets you know this is serious sometimes. And I think that's very smart of Damien Leone. But yeah, I really like this movie, and I think it's a good time. But my number one, handily, there is no question, it is The Awakening from 2011. This stars Rebecca Hall as an author and ghost hunter who's really a ghost debunker. She goes into places that are supposed to be haunted, proves it's all a hoax and it's not true. And to do that, she is called into a boys' boarding school and discovers a lot more than she bargained for. I thought this was an incredible movie. It is easily the best thing I watched last month. It's one of my favorite discoveries of the year. This is just one of the most beautiful period piece ghost films I've ever seen, and I love that subgenre. I thought the performances were amazing. Rebecca Hall and Dominic West, so good. And they have this like very good gothic romance in there with very palpable sexual tension that was just handled better than it is in most movies like this. And it's scary at times. The story is very interesting. I absolutely love The Awakening. It is by far my highest recommendation for my Halloween watch list this year. So that's what I watched. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Halloween. I just really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Halloween. If you want to spend even more time with me, you can click the video on the screen and we can hang out even more. But with all that said, thank you so much. Enjoy yourself today and get spooky. I'll see you next time.